Well, here it is, yet again, corporate America pooping in its own bed. And it seems particularly video game publishers are taking an extra large size load. And it is yet again another one of those large CEOs making difficult and tough decisions to call employees by the thousands. In this video, I want to rage about Microsoft's decision to cut 10,000 jobs on the eve of its possible merger with Activision, and radically change my mind on a position that I held just yesterday. It's going to be a good one. My fellow workers of America, you have gleefully signed up for your dream job and then years later unceremoniously let go for economic reasons and, well, found yourself in the LZ. Thanks for stopping by. Don't forget the comment section below. And we're going to spread it on thick today, folks, because funny enough, if you are a viewer of the LZ, you know that previously I kind of supported Microsoft picking up Activision Blizzard. Well, simply because the gain of that to the workers, the IP, and the fans would have probably been better than the loss of, well, where they're sitting right now, as a matter of fact. But unsurprisingly, Microsoft continues to prove me wrong and jam my whole foot in my mouth. Only months after announcing that it plans to pick up Activision Blizzard for nearly $70 billion, Microsoft announced today that it's cutting 10,000 workers, which is about 5% of its workforce, joining other tech companies that have scaled back their pandemic-era expansions because, that's a thing. Mega corporations biting off more than they can chew for some reason. The company said in its regulatory filing Wednesday that the layoffs were a response to, quote, macroeconomic conditions and changing customer priorities. Because the problem is the pandemic didn't last 5 years as opposed to, 3 years that it did now. So we gotta let you go. Oh, and spoiler alert, the pandemic's not over. Microsoft said that they would be making changes to its hardware portfolio and consolidating its leased office locations, and that this was all just a big part of its over-exuberance in hiring over the last 3 years. And even funny enough, while we are eliminating roles in some areas, says Nadella, we will continue to hire in key strategic areas. Instead of simply saying, hey, instead of us firing you, hey, how would you like to move over into this other position? Like maybe some options instead of just being freshly unemployed. Some more fun quotes from these events also include, we're also seeing organizations in every industry and geography exercise caution as some parts of the world are in a recession and other parts are anticipating one. Great time to fire people! And of course, like I mentioned, that Microsoft, which owns Xbox game business, also faces regulatory uncertainty in its US and Europe delaying its planned $68.7 billion takeover of video game company Activision Blizzard, which, ironically enough, has 9,800 employees as of a year ago. Oh, and they're all working on Call of Duty right now. And aside from, wildly dropping nearly $70 billion on Call of Duty and Candy Crush, you want another real kicker to this? That same CEO is talking about tightening the belt just after making almost $55 million in total compensation in the year 2022. But I know you're here to talk about games, and so your question is, well, how does this affect the games market? How does this work with, obviously you know that Activision, Blizzard, and the Microsoft merger are in trouble, right? They're facing an uphill battle, and even though I feel like, or at least prior to today, because God forbid we fully trust a giant corporation to handle our favorite games and our favorite intellectual properties in good faith with hopefully a golden future in mind, they keep making that just completely and entirely unbelievably, you're proving me wrong. Well, it turns out that both 343 Industries, which was developing Halo, and Bethesda, which was also recently purchased a year or so ago, both of those studios were hit, particularly 343, and Halo fans are just going to be fully thrilled by this because Halo Infinite was starting to be in a somewhat decent place, and their development and progress of that game, which arguably launched in a pretty terrible position, was lacking in content. Which, funny enough, in my opinion, Halo Infinite is actually a pretty great game. I've been playing quite a bit of it lately. It plays great, it's fun, I know it has its issues, but I mean, if we're talking, if we're going to weigh Halo 4 and Halo 5 next to Halo Infinite, I would say that Infinite takes the case sort of holistically. It is just an all-around better game. So now that you're just culling however many people from 343, and oh, by the way, Joseph Staten, who they brought on to help get the game over the finish line, is leaving the studio again and going back to Microsoft Xbox Publishing. So the temporary captain is no longer captain. Now listen, let's play sort of the devil's advocate here for a moment. This is not a new thing with major corporations in America. Sometimes you just gotta tighten the belt, right? This is as big as a corporation or as little as you, the individual who has bills and only but so much money to help pay them. But this is not really a comparable situation. Microsoft is one of the biggest corporations, if not the biggest corporation on the planet. Some efficiencies are necessary with really anything. But all this says to me is that it's a failure of leadership. When you can admit your own mistakes simply moments after firing people by the thousands, alternatively, in my mind, I'm thinking, if I messed up this bad as leadership of a giant corporation, perhaps maybe I should go too. Perhaps maybe I should take some of that $55 million that I made in 1 year as compensation bonuses and maybe pass some of that out to the people I have to or have now just plunged into complete uncertainty. Now, I do not know sort of what the exit strategy of these folks are. To their credit and Microsoft's credit, there may be some kind of full package that I haven't read up on that talks about severance and when these folks' last day are, whatever post-employment benefits that there might be for these people. In smaller job capacities, these folks just never get that kind of benefit at all. It's here's Cobra and good luck. So they may have something like that in place. I don't know. And if that's great, this makes a terrible, awful situation slightly less terrible. But of course, once again, this tells me right away, it's, again, a failure of leadership. Microsoft and Nadella are admitting that they bit off more than they could chew in an area where, well, we were really all uncertain and we had no idea how this was going to go. But it is rarely ever the people at the top making the decisions to cut the people by the thousands that have to suffer for this. As a matter of fact, they're going to get applauded. Shareholders will pop corks and say congratulations and thank you for saving our investment and maximizing our billion. And really, it just kind of makes my stomach churn a little bit. And honestly, before today, I was kind of hoping that Microsoft would effectively acquire Activision. I know that I'm not supposed to be for monopolies and things like that, but really, I think that Activision employees, their intellectual properties, the value of Call of Duty and things like that, and the competitiveness of Game Pass probably would have been better for those things than what they are. However, it is not the case that all of these got some kind of severance package or something like that. Well, then that's just messed up and further proves that we need unions in the gaming industry. Once again, love to hear your thoughts here. Look at the comments section down below. Like the video if you thought it was useful to your LZ experience, and thanks for stopping by.